The cops had barely zipped up her windbreaker when she screamed. I was protecting the child. Cut to me, watching from the sidewalk, hands cuffed, shirt torn, blood still drying on my temple. Yeah, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up being treated like a criminal while the woman who kidnapped my adopted son was getting first aid and sympathy. It started like most things in suburbia do, with a freshly paved driveway, a plate of banana bread from the neighbor across the street, and a sigh of relief that maybe, just maybe, this would be the place we could settle into a quiet life. I'd served my time in the city, traded the sirens for silence, the skyline for sidewalks, and I was ready to raise my boy somewhere with good schools, open yards, and neighbors who waved in the morning. We moved into Maple Glen on a mild Sunday morning in late March. Our U-Haul wobbling awkwardly down cul-de-sac, curves too narrow for anything larger than a minivan. My son Malik, 8 years old and endlessly curious, stuck his head out the window and declared, "Dad, this place looks like the brochure at the dentist's office." He wasn't wrong. Pristine lawns, kids on scooters, moms blooming out of mulch beds. A little too perfect maybe, but I figured that was the price of peace. It wasn't until the banana bread went uneaten that I met Beverly Hawthorne. She arrived on our porch that evening with a clipboard in one hand and a tiny American flag pin on her lapel, like she'd just come from judging a 4 competition. She introduced herself as the HOA president and said it with the kind of pride people normally reserve for elected office. Her smile was all teeth and tension, like she was trying to force it through a strainer. "We're thrilled to have new neighbors," she said, eyeing Malik, who stood behind me, clutching his Captain America figurine. "Is he family?" "He's my son," I replied. No explanation beyond that. Didn't know her one. She blinked like a camera flash went off in her brain and immediately pivoted to the community guidelines, talking about lawn height, garbage bin etiquette, and the importance of preserving the visual harmony of our shared spaces. I signed the acknowledgement form and figured that it'd be the end of it. It wasn't. The first notice came 2 weeks later. A polite reminder that our trash bins had remained visible past 10 a.m. on a Monday. Then another about the placement of Malik's basketball hoop, temporary, portable, tucked respectfully beside the garage. Then one more about unapproved structural additions. After I installed a simple wooden swing set in the backyard, I had built it myself, careful to keep it modest and neutral, toned, nothing flashy. Malik had asked for a tire swing, and I told him that could come later. Apparently, Beverly didn't agree. "It disrupts the continuity of the yardscape," she said during her second pop-in, this time without banana bread, just the clipboard. I pointed out that the Roberts had a jungle gym 3 doors down. "That structure was approved during a different board's tenure," she said. "Different era, different guidelines." I offered to submit retroactive documentation. She offered a polite smile and said, "It's just not ideal." That was her favorite word I would come to learn. Not ideal, not standard, not appropriate. Malik started noticing it, too. "How come she always looks at me like I did something?" he asked one day after riding his scooter past her porch and getting the patented Hawthorne squint. "Because she doesn't understand us yet," I said, trying to keep it light. But the truth sat heavy in my gut. It wasn't about a scooter or a swing or even a structure. It was about the story she'd already written in her head. A single father, a white man with a black son and a house that didn't match her mental inventory of who belonged. The letters got weirder. One came and signed, stuffed in our mailbox without postage. "Some of us are worried about safety. Too many strangers coming in and out. Kids have to be protected." Another arrived folded in thirds, typed in bold font. "He doesn't look like you. Just making sure everything's legal." He had friends on the block, loved our Saturday morning bike rides, and treated the swing set like it was a theme park ride. But I started catching Beverly on our security cam footage, standing across the street watching the backyard with that clipboard in hand, as if she were waiting for an infraction to bloom. Then came the safety inspection. A polite but firm email from the HOA stating they'd be conducting visual reviews of all properties to ensure community welfare. I knew the law. I knew they couldn't step foot on my lawn without notice or consent. So I watched from the porch as Beverly walked the sidewalk, slowly pausing in front of our yard. Phone raised. Snap, 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 like she was taking mug shots of our swing set. Our welcome mat. The chalk drawings Malik had made on the sidewalk. "Is this normal?" I asked our neighbor Carol, the one who'd brought the banana bread. She looked around before answering. It is now. Then came the kicker. A folded tricolor notice slipped under my door while I was at work, labeled informational only. It cited multiple unverified concerns from community members regarding custodial status and child welfare. Said it was within the HOA's right to report suspected endangerment or irregular guardianship to appropriate state authorities. There was no accusation, no direct statement, just a page full of implications written with the kind of clinical detachment that makes your skin crawl. Malik was in his room playing Minecraft, oblivious to the fire someone had just lit under my feet. That night, I opened the safe and pulled out the adoption papers, originals sealed and notarized. I laid them on the dining table and stared at them for 20 minutes. Not because I needed the reassurance, because I needed the reminder that everything I had done was real, was legal, was mine. But in Beverly's world, none of that mattered. Paper wasn't protection. And now I knew for certain this wasn't about HOAs or home values or swing sets. Beverly Hawthorne wasn't trying to maintain visual harmony. She was trying to dismantle a family she didn't believe in, one mailbox violation at a time. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything broke. Not in a dramatic crashing glass kind of way. More like the slow stomach-churning moment when you walk into a room and feel before you even understand why that something is off. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Malik's backpack still hung by the door, his sneakers lined up beneath it like always. But his voice, his usual after-school dad, I'm starving. His endless commentary about whatever his class pet had done that day, that was missing. I called out once, then again, louder. Nothing. The TV was off. The swing set in the backyard swayed a little as if it had been used recently and forgotten mid-play. I checked every room twice before panic set in. His phone was still plugged in. My chest felt like it was caving in. I was about to call 911 when I saw the envelope propped on the kitchen counter right next to the fruit bowl. My name typed across it. Not handwritten, not addressed with warmth, just my name. Inside was a single sheet of HOA letterhead signed by Beverly Hawthorne. As of 2:35 p.m. today, the child Malik Hawthorne has been placed in temporary protective custody, pending verification of legal guardianship. Due to escalating safety concerns and multiple unverified reports regarding the child's welfare, the HOA has acted under its Community Emergency Responsibility Clause to ensure immediate safety and appropriate care. He is safe and in good hands. I reread it 5 times before it registered. Then I collapsed into the kitchen chair like I'd been shot. He is safe and in good hands. Not with me. Not with his father. Not with the only person who's tucked him in every night since the day the court finalized our adoption. I dialed 911 so fast, I fumbled the first call. When the operator picked up on the second, I was already halfway out the door, yelling into the phone that my son had been taken. By who, sir? She asked. By the HOA president, I said. She took my kid. That got me a pause. Sir, are you saying a neighbor has abducted your child? Yes, I said. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. Cops arrived within the hour. I had every document ready, birth certificate, court order, adoption records, all of it. The 2 officers, one young and polite, the other older and already looking annoyed, took the papers and looked them over like I was handing them expired coupons. You said his last name is Hawthorne? The younger one asked. That's Beverly's last name, too. I felt my hands tremble. She filed the report, didn't she? I said she used our different last names against us. They didn't answer. Instead, the older officer asked me to step back and let us do our job, while the younger one made a call and walked toward his squad car. I stood there in my driveway, surrounded by neighbors who had started to gather across the street like we were filming a reality show. One of them whispered to another. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't need to. I saw the shape of the word kid. I saw the way Carol from across the street couldn't meet my eyes. The same Carol who once said, "You two are so cute together," when she saw Malik holding my hand after school. Now she wouldn't even wave. That night, I didn't sleep. I called every hospital, every hotline, every number I could think of. The police kept saying it was a custodial dispute under investigation. I kept saying it was kidnapping. We're looking into it. They said there are claims of endangerment, they said. There's paperwork to sort, they said. I demanded to see the CPS report. They told me I'd need to go through channels. I had the legal documents. I had proof. But Beverly had the narrative. And in places like Maple Glen, narrative was everything. The next morning, the neighborhood app exploded. A post titled "Concerned Neighbor Takes Action," had nearly 300 comments in 2 hours. Beverly, or someone acting on her behalf, had written a long, scathing update about a deeply troubling situation involving a young child whose well-being had been a source of quiet concern for many in the community. No names were mentioned, of course, but everyone knew. She mentioned odd hours, screaming late at night, Malik's nightmares, unusual behavior, and of course, lack of familial resemblance. There it was in black and white. Because my son didn't look like me, I was suspect. Someone commented, "If this is who I think it is, I always felt something was off." Another, "I'm glad someone finally stepped in." Someone else asked, "Is he even the real dad?" By mid-morning, our mailbox was gone. Literally pulled out of the ground and left leaning against the porch with the door open like a mouth screaming in silence. That afternoon, a CPS officer finally called. She said Malik was safe, staying temporarily with a verified community guardian. Beverly, I asked how that was even legal. She said, Mr. Hawthorne filed a claim and produced documentation alleging custodial concerns. Mr. Hawthorne, I asked, she's not his mother. She's not even his relative. The child's name matches the report, she said. Until we can verify custody, I have the papers, I shouted. They're right here in my hands. Then bring them to the county office and we can begin the formal review process. I stared at the phone in disbelief. The formal review process? They had stolen my son, and I was being asked to formally prove he was mine. I drove to the county office that day, papers in hand, but the wheels turned slow. Red tape, procedural delays, verification requirements. Meanwhile, Beverly walked free, feeding Malik. God knows what lies. She claimed he was safe, that I was just confused, that this was all for the best. And in the court of suburban public opinion, her word weighed more than a folder full of notarized documents. Because she looked the part, she had the flag pin, she wore her cardigans like armor, she had 30 years in the neighborhood, and I had 30 days on the record. The next week was a blur. Lawyers, hearings, emergency motions. I paid thousands. I couldn't afford to expedite everything. I slept 3 hours a night and woke up in cold sweats. Malik's teacher called and said he'd been withdrawn from school by an authorized guardian. I screamed so loud I nearly snapped the phone in half. The HOA held a community safety night in the park while my son was missing, and Beverly gave a speech about neighborhood vigilance. She ended it by saying, "When we see something, we must say something. Even when it's uncomfortable, especially then." They applauded. She had them eating out of her perfectly manicured hands. The swing set in our backyard was removed during that week. Not by me, just gone. Posts on the forum called me combative, hostile, unstable. Someone wrote, "I heard he screamed at the cops and tried to attack Beverly when they came to check on the boy." That was a lie. But no one asked for the truth. They asked for drama. And Beverly gave them a story. All I had was silence and court dockets and a house full of Malik's drawings and clothes and stuffed animals that still smelled like his shampoo. I'd done everything right. But I wasn't being treated like a father. I was being treated like a threat. And the worst part, she still had him. Beverly Hawthorne had kidnapped my son, and the law was asking me to wait patiently while they figured out if I was allowed to get him back. I stopped waiting and I started building, because if the system wasn't going to deliver justice for us, I would take them somewhere it had no choice. A courtroom. My courtroom. And when I was done, there wouldn't be a single gated community in this county that didn't know exactly what happened when someone tried to steal a child from a judge. I didn't plan to go nuclear. Not at first. I wanted to believe the system would work. That all I had to do was show the right documents, say the right words, and someone with a badge and a brain would look Beverly in the eye and say, "Ma'am, you can't kidnap a child." But days passed, then a week, then 2. Malik was still gone, and the authorities were still sorting it out. What they didn't know, what Beverly never bothered to find out, was who she was really playing chicken with. I wasn't just a father in a cardigan. I wasn't some IT dad with a temper problem. I was the Honorable Judge Andrew Lockcatch, U.S. District Court, 5th Circuit, appointed by a president who now had me on speed dial and confirmed unanimously by the Senate. The same Andrew Lockcatch who'd ruled against Chevron, dismantled a dirty sheriff's racket in Texas, and exposed a banking fraud scheme so wide it landed 3 senators in prison. My face had been on C-SPAN more times than hers had been in the church bulletin. I wore the robe. I knew the rules. I'd helped write some of them. And while Beverly was posting memes about neighborhood safety on Nextdoor, I was activating every weapon I had tucked away behind polite smiles and half-listed warnings. You see, I'd smelled this storm a long time ago. The first time she looked at Malik like he was an accessory I didn't earn. The first time she said, "It's so brave of you to take him in." The first time she emphasized your son like it was a question. That's when I started building the file. I had emails. I had photos. I had screenshots of every HOA notice and hand-delivered threat. I had porch cam footage of her walking up to my house in the dead of night to measure our lawn with a ruler. I had copies of the anonymous letters matched to the HOA printer network by serial signature. I had a private investigator, one of my old clerks turned DOJ analyst, track her phone's geolocation pings. She wasn't just peeking, she was stalking. I encrypted everything, uploaded it to a secure server, created a backup drive, and dropped it in a fireproof box at the courthouse. Then I waited because I knew sooner or later she'd make the mistake of thinking my quiet was weakness, that my restraint was permission. And now here we were, the night after her HOA meeting performance, the one where she used coded language to accuse me of being unstable and combative. I sat down at my desk and pulled up the file I hadn't opened since the day I finalized Malik's adoption, Plan B. I logged in through my judicial credentials, attached a sworn affidavit, and filed an emergency injunction under Section 1983 of the Civil Rights Act. Civil deprivation of rights under color of state law. Why? Because in some states, HOA powers are quasi-governmental. Beverly and her board had overstepped into de facto legal custody interference. They were operating like a rogue agency, and I had the federal teeth to prove it. Within 90 minutes, I had an ex parte hearing scheduled on my docket. I recused myself and referred the case to Judge Harmon, a colleague I trusted. She called me personally. "Andy, is this for real?" "Every word," I said. "And I want subpoenas, email servers, internal board messages, surveillance footage, everything. You're going to war." I already did. I said this is the airstrike. By sunrise, the subpoenas had been issued. A process server delivered them to the HOA office in a packet so thick it slapped when it hit the counter. I looped in the state's attorney general. I called in a favor from the federal marshals. I filed a complaint with the state bar against the family law attorney Beverly had used to file false CPS claims. Turns out she was her niece. I demanded forensic audits, data pulls, depositions, and I did it all while sipping coffee on the same porch she used to scowl at from across the street. That afternoon, my legal team. Yes, my team. Because I had 3 attorneys now working pro bono just to be part of the headline. Cracked the HOA's internal Slack chat archive. Beverly had used her board login to orchestrate a whisper campaign. She called me dangerous, unhinged, a possible predator. She sent a message the night Malik went missing. "We need to move quickly before he has time to respond legally. Frame it as concern, not accusation. Make the narrative stick." She called my family unnatural. Referred to Malik as that poor boy and a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. She told another board member, "We're not removing a child. We're correcting a mistake the state never should have approved." My blood went cold reading that one. She didn't see Malik as a boy. She saw him as a problem and me as the glitch. But the crown jewel, the grenade that blew it all open, came from a video chat recording the board had saved for record keeping. Beverly, drinking white wine in her sunroom, laughed as she described the moment CPS finally took the bait. "You have to say it just the right way," she explained. "Not accusatory, just scared, vulnerable. Use the phrases they look for. Confused about the child's safety, uncertain about the father's behavior. They'll act faster if they think there's an immediate risk." The other board members chuckled. "Won't he sue you?" one of them asked. "Please," Beverly replied. "People like that can't afford the kind of lawyers it takes to win against an HOA. My attorneys paused the clip right there. "You want to leak this?" one of them asked. "Not yet," I said. "Let the court see it first." Because I didn't just want revenge. I wanted precedent. I wanted a published opinion so brutal it would get cited in HOA trainings for the next 50 years. I wanted the phrase Hawthorne standard to mean legal suicide via overreach. So I kept the press at bay. I turned down interviews. I gave the appearance of calm. But behind the scenes, I was drafting the brief that would ruin her. The judge granted my emergency motion within 72 hours. Custody restored. Malik returned. Not just returned, escorted by federal marshals with CPS supervisors in tow and Beverly screaming about legal overreach while they walked past her with zero eye contact. Malik clung to me like he'd never let go again. I didn't believe her, he whispered. She said you weren't really my dad, but I didn't believe her. I held him so tight. I thought we might both disappear, but we didn't. We stayed. And the storm, it had only just begun because now the court had teeth. Depositions started. Civil rights charges mounted. Beverly hired a crisis PR firm, but the footage leaked anyway. Not by me, mind you, but by a whistleblower HOA member who realized too late she'd hitched her wagon to a sociopath. The headlines were merciless. Whole president accused of child abduction and custody smear campaign. Federal judge alleges Hull conspired to remove adopted son. Community rocked by racist emails and illegal custody meddling. Beverly resigned 2 days later. Not gracefully, not quietly. She blamed media bias and deep state family courts. But it was over. Her power evaporated like snow in August. And I wasn't done. Not by a mile. Because I had one more motion to file, one last document to draft. It started with the phrase "to whom it may concern" and ended with a request for formal disbarment of the attorneys who assisted her. I submitted it with attachments, footnotes, sworn testimony, and one final quote from Beverly herself. He'll never touch me. I know people. I am this neighborhood. No, Beverly, you were this neighborhood. Never judge a family by their skin color, their names, or personal biases. Look beyond the surface. The story you just witnessed is not only about a father and his child being torn apart. It's a powerful example of how prejudice, abuse of power, and silence from the community can nearly destroy a family. Lightbulb lessons for all of us. Never underestimate the power of hidden biases. They may disguise themselves as concern, care, or rules, but underneath can lie pure discrimination. Know your rights and understand the law. Whether you're a parent, guardian, or neighbor, it's crucial to know your legal protections. In this case, paperwork wasn't just bureaucracy, it was a shield to protect a family. Don't stay silent when you see something wrong. The community's indifference enabled the harm. Speaking up early could have spared Malik much pain. Remember, family is defined not by blood, but by love, responsibility, and commitment. And above all, never underestimate a father's resilience, especially one who is a federal judge. Backhand index pointing right. If you have ever felt excluded or doubted because of your differences, know this. You have the right to exist, to love, and be loved. And if someone tries to take that away, don't be afraid to speak up. The law, justice, and true community stand with you. Thank you for watching. Please share this video if you believe every family, no matter what they look like, deserves protection. Black Heart. If you want, I can also help create a heartfelt video outro with voiceover or matching effects.